Hi, everybody. I'm Joan Ryan. I'm the author of Intangibles, Unlocking the Science and Soul of Team Chemistry. Just came out this week. Really excited about it. And I'm really excited to have Tim Kurkjian with me. Now, Tim started covering baseball, I think, back in 1981, or even maybe before that.
A little bit in 1979 also. So, yes, I go back several decades.
Okay. And, Tim is the longtime top baseball analyst for ESPN, does everything baseball. He's as steeped in the game as anyone I know when we go back a few years. And my book, to just give the listeners and subscribers an idea, is really about exploring the scientific foundation of team chemistry. And using different teams as sort of case studies. For instance, the 2010 Giants, the 2013 Boston Red Sox, the 1996 Women's Olympic Basketball Team, 2018-19 Golden State Warriors. So I'm really interested, especially in talking to Tim, because you have spent more time in clubhouses than surely anyone I know. And you've written 3 books, and your books, especially the more recent 2, are so much about the experience of the players and the coaches on the field, in the clubhouse. And so I want to get the analytics question out of the way, because you're over at the general managers as well, and you have a lot of colleagues that we know were in the analytics age. So where are you in that debate, chemistry and analytics?
Well, Joan, I'm the son of a mathematician, so give me the numbers, give me as much data as you can. However, baseball, to me at least, is the hardest game in the world to play. And we have taken the human element out of the game far too many times. And I think that is an enormous mistake. There has to be a blend, of course. You have to look at these new numbers that have come up. They are useful. But in the end, I'm going to listen to Bruce Bochy before I'm going to look at any sort of set of numbers. I asked Bruce Bochy, Buck Showalter, Jim Leland, Dusty Baker, can this guy play or not? That's what I, as a reporter and a writer and an analyst, needs to know. I can look at those numbers, and there is so much there, but they don't tell the whole story. And I will always take the eyes and ears of a veteran manager, coach, instructor, scout before I'm going to believe anything that I see on a computer screen or a printout somewhere.
So what about team chemistry, that phenomenon? I mean, does it actually exist in your mind? And what, if you think it does, what are the markers that you notice of a team that you think, God, they've got something going on, they've got some chemistry?
Right. I definitely believe in team chemistry. I don't think a lot of people in baseball believe in team chemistry, especially our young executives who are brilliant young men who have a really good idea what they're trying to do here, but I don't think they're factoring in what team chemistry is all about. For instance, 2019 Nationals, Eduardo Perez, my dear friend at ESPN, went in there and said, there is nothing going on in that clubhouse. 2018 Nationals. Nothing going on in that clubhouse. A year later, 2019, the year they won the World Series, he came back and said, that's the best clubhouse I've been in. Now, people will say, well, it's just because Bryce Harper wasn't there. That is so grossly unfair, but that's not the point. The point is a guy who has spent his entire life in a clubhouse, who played in the big leagues for 10 years, whose dad is a Hall of Famer. He can recognize team chemistry, camaraderie from a mile away. And he didn't feel any of it in 2018, and he felt an overwhelming amount of it in 2019. I think that was very telling. And I will tell you this too, Joan. Now, maybe it's simple as, well, the Nationals, of course they had great chemistry. They won the World Series. Everyone that wins has great chemistry. The year before the Red Sox won the World Series, they won 119 games, including the postseason. I did a game from the booth in August in Philadelphia, Red Sox at Phillies. And they were playing a simulated game at 1:30 in the afternoon for a 7 o'clock start. And there were 18 players at the simulated game. None of them had to be there. The only thing that mattered was that Eduardo Rodriguez was there to throw a simulated game. Mookie Betts was there. David Price was standing behind the mound as the pseudo umpire and the support system for young Eduardo Rodriguez. So I looked at Alex Cora, who's been in a million clubhouses himself. I said, "What is this?" He goes, "This doesn't happen anywhere else. It only happens here." So are you telling me that has nothing to do with them winning the World Series? That's what camaraderie, team chemistry is all about. It sounds corny, but we're all in this together.
How does that affect performance, though? You know, it's nice to go to work. You know, we work in offices, you know, well, I don't anymore because I'm a writer at home. But you go into your place of work and you can all get along and you really like each other. It doesn't mean your productivity is going to go up. And the same thing with teams. You know, we see teams that get along great, but they don't win. So how do you navigate through those kind of contradictions?
That's a really good question. I covered the Rangers in the early 80s. They were terrible, but they really liked each other.
Yeah.
I covered some really bad teams in Baltimore who really got along, and they were terrible also. And I've also covered some teams that were really good, and they didn't particularly like each other. So it comes down to, how do you get productivity out of chemistry? And that is a very, very difficult thing to do. I just think it starts to build. Guys start to trust each other. They start to win some games. They start to put some things together. I think that's where it comes from. Tony La Russa told me once, a long time ago, when your best player is also your best guy, that's when you know you're in great shape. So, you know, he didn't even say the A's were that way, because the best guys on those teams were, say, Carney Lansford and David Henderson, who weren't the best players on the team. They were really good. But Tom Kelly essentially told me the same thing in the late 80s when the Twins were great. Kirby Puckett's our best player. Kirby Puckett's our best guy. That's usually how chemistry starts to form when things like that start to happen. And that 2018 Red Sox team, I think you can make a case Mookie Betts was the best guy on the team and the best player maybe in the entire league. So you got to have that connection if you're going to get performance and chemistry working together.
Right. You know, in my definition, and after 10 years of doing research on this, you know, I'm almost embarrassed to say it took me that long, but doing research on it, you know, you know that chemistry can't manufacture talent, right? So you have to have the talent. And then chemistry amplifies the talent you have. So in my definition, you know, the function of team chemistry, and it only has one function, and it is to elevate performance, because why else talk about it? And I talked, you know, I did tons of research with the military and even went back to Virginia and interviewed retired General Stanley McChrystal. And nobody, you know, no entity in the history of human existence knows more about how bonding and commitment to each other elevates performance. That's why they have boot camp. You know, let's get these guys bonded. We'll put them through hell. They'll be bonded. They'll trust each other. And we need that because under unbearable stress, they still have to perform at a really high level. And so there's tons of science about why does that happen. And I remember, you know, the best quote I got in researching this, and you will relate to this. It's right up your alley. So I'm talking to Jake Peavy, you know, when he spent a few years at the Giants. And, you know Jake Peavy, you know, the snorter and the stomper on the mound, right? You know, 110%. And, you know, and so I asked him, I said, you know, if team chemistry elevates performance, why would you possibly need team chemistry? I mean, you could be on an island by yourself and you've got it all on the mound with you. You know, you don't need team chemistry. And he said, this line crystallized for me. It was the first moment I said, God, that's it. He said, My teammates bring out a fight in me I can't willingly summon for myself. And that was that whole military thing. Now, is that something, I imagine you see that even if you haven't really articulated it that exact way.
Right. That is beautifully said. And by the way, with Jake Peavy, Adam Dunn once told me they used to have an over and under on how many pitches into a game before he starts screaming and yelling at himself. He's only yelling at himself, by the way. He's not yelling at up or any teammates. So Dunn said it's usually about 7 pitches. I usually go under and win because that's all it takes for Jake Peavy. I think a perfect example of this, Joan, is the '88 Dodgers. The last time the Dodgers won the World Series. I just did their game the other night, the Eck game, the Kurkjian game. And Steve Sachs was on with me, and so were some others, and they all acknowledged the A's were way better than the Dodgers. Yeah. But what happened was Kurkjian came to the Dodgers, won the MVP that year, driving in 76 runs. So it wasn't like the most productive season. But he came in looking like a caveman, growling and snarling. He had a World Series already under his belt. And Sachs looked at it, and this is a compliment. Sachs kind of said it at certain points, this guy's crazy. I don't know what he's doing. But that craziness really brought out the best in everybody else. And that's one reason. And Oral Hershiser, of course, had a lot to do with this, but that was one reason that team played that way, because Kurkjian brought that edge that brought out the stuff that they couldn't summon on their own. And then, of course, when the emotional leader of the team on one leg hits a home run off the greatest closer we've ever seen in Game 1 and runs around the bases like this, well, that was the end of that series. No World Series has ever ended after one game. I think that one did.
Oh yeah, I was there. I was covering it because in the Bay Area, we were down there for the A's, and Eck goes in and everybody reaches for their car keys,
right.
And here comes Kurkjian. Okay, so I want to so I have a couple of theories, after all this research, and I want to run one of them by you. Okay, one of my theories, and this is the only chapter in the book that's not based on science. It's more my observation and then running this by a million players, coaches, and sharpening it. So my theory is that a great chemistry team, first I'm going to ask you, and maybe you're going to say the Nationals, but in recent years, what team would you say was the best chemistry team you saw?
Well, it goes back a little ways, but the best chemistry team I've ever seen is the 1993 Phillies. Those guys were complete lunatics, usually in the best possible way. I mean, that's John Kruk, Lenny Dykstra, Mitch Williams, Darren Dalton, Dave Holland. Oh my gosh. And Krucky, who I adore, I worked right next to him for years. He's looked at me several times, said, Tim, there'll never be another team like this ever again. He told me after virtually every game, home or road, those guys would sit around the clubhouse, drink beer, and eat pizza. And even though they talked about other things, mostly they talked about baseball. And this is not positive, but Krucky kind of laughed and said, 14 of us got divorced that year because we were all together. I'll never forget walking in the clubhouse, that Phillies clubhouse in Chicago at Wrigley one day. I walk in and Curt Schilling walks right by me. I knew him well, and he whispers to me, watch out, the animals are out of their cages today. That's what that animal house-like clubhouse was like. But the camaraderie was unmistakable. It was unforgettable. And we will never have anything like that again. And for good reason, for the most part. We don't want 14 guys getting divorced, and we don't want beer flowing after every game and guys driving home. But that's still the greatest chemistry team I've ever seen, and they nearly won the World Series.
Yeah, clearly they were committed to each other more than they were committed to their spouses or their families. But there is a price to be paid for winning, Tim. So there was that. Okay, so my theory, Tim, is on a great chemistry team like this, that there are archetype characters that emerge. And I don't think you can hire for them, but they emerge. It's as if the team manifests what it needs. So I'm going to go through my 7 archetype characters and see who you name on that 1993 Phillies team. We'll see if we had them.
Okay.
All right. Well, the first is the warrior. So like in the Giants, it would have been Madison Bumgarner, or Barry Bonds, that guy who everybody feels like he's almost like the poster boy for what we want this team to what's the word I'm looking? Yeah, to describe everybody. And that guy, we feel like if we have that guy, we can win. Right? We always have a chance with that guy. Did the Phillies have that guy?
They had several of those guys, but I'm going to pick third baseman Dave Hollins. When I hear the word warrior, I get along with him really well. I always have, but I was always afraid of him because he was so big, he was so strong, he was so nuts. Even his own teammates were a little bit fearful. He was so wildly competitive, football player from Buffalo, New York. Man, I could tell you some stories about him. So when I hear warrior on that Phillies team, I think about third baseman Dave Hollins first. He wasn't the best player on the team, but he played every day. He was a good player, but he would kill you before he let you beat him.
Ah, perfect. So he sets that tone. Okay, and then the sage. Like for the Cubs, it was David Ross, sort of that Tim Hudson at the Giants, kind of the non-judgmental grandpa who anybody can go to, and he's going to say, yeah, it's going to be okay. Here's some advice. You're amazing. You're great. You're going to be fine.
Well, I don't think there was too much sage on that 1993 Phillies, but Darren Dalton, their catcher, fits the description best for me. Joan, he met with the media every night. So on a night when Kurt Schilling or somebody had a bad night and didn't want to talk, Dutch Dalton was always there. And granted, he's the catcher. We always need to talk about whether the pitcher was great or not. A lot of times catchers are spokesmen. He was the best spokesman, and I know they went to him in times of trouble and said, Dutch, what should we do here? So he was the ultimate team leader as far as come through me, I'll take the pressure off everyone else. Somebody's having a bad day, I'll take care of it.
That's perfect. And the kid, the one that comes in and just reminds everybody what you love about the game. They're excited about everything. They go into the dining room and it's like, oh my God, there's a cappuccino maker. This is awesome. Was there a kid on that team?
I got to think of the kids. That was such a veteran team for the Phillies. Kevin Stocker was their young shortstop. He wasn't a very good player, but he still had that, aw shucks, got him in the big leagues kind of thing, and it was like a really cool thing for him. So that team was such a veteran team. And if you were too goofy walking around in that clubhouse, someone's going to grab you around the neck and say, look, we got a bunch of veterans here. You got to grow up.
Okay. Well, then I'm guessing that there wasn't the archetype of a buddy. The guy that, nobody eats alone. Like maybe when they were gathering in the clubhouse after the game, it's like, hey, dude, come on over here, sit down. We're all going to talk about this.
Yeah, I'm not sure that guy existed on that team either. I mean, we still have a lot of names to get to, Kruk and Dykstra and Mitch Williams, but I don't think any of those guys is, hey, son, come over and sit next to me so I can tell you how this really works.
Yeah, I don't think they generally have to do that, but it's making sure that you're a part of the pack. Like you are sitting down, you're joining us. We're going to ask you some questions. What happened on that play? Come on in. So that you feel like you are, that every single guy is a part of that tribe.
All right. Well, then John Kruk then qualifies to this degree. He's the least warm and fuzzy guy you'll ever meet, although deep down inside, he is as warm-hearted as you'll ever meet. But on the outside, no. One of their guys was late for opening day one year because he thought it was a night game. So opening day, he shows up at the park late. And Kurkjian, instead of screaming at him, pulls him aside and said, son, we need to have a little chat here. Like, if you can't even be here in time for opening day, we got some real problems. So that's where the warm-hearted Kruk came out. Instead of just punching the guy in the neck, he said, I better talk to you about what we're going to do next year.
Right. So he would also be then the enforcer. There was probably a lot of enforcers on that team that kept everybody, hey, dude, you got to pay attention. You're not working out. And that's not how we do things here.
Right. And again, that's where Darren Dalton came in. I remember Schilling told me once that he had thrown 7 shutout innings against the Giants. He had allowed 1 hit, and he had only thrown fastballs the entire game because he could locate it wherever he wanted it. He could cut it, make it sink, but it was his fastball. So he goes to Dutch Dalton after 7 innings and says, shouldn't we throw something other than a fastball? And Dalton just looks at him and says, look at the scoreboard. They haven't scored. They got 1 hit. Just throw what I put down. Okay? So Dalton fits like all of these categories. That's why he was such a great leader on that team.
Yeah. And then the other, and this may fit a lot of guys in that clubhouse, I'm thinking, is the jester. And in my archetype, the jester can be the most powerful character in a clubhouse, as you've seen on many teams. I mean, not only does a jester break the tension when you need it most, especially in the postseason, but the jester is also the one that can send a very, very sharp message wrapped in humor. So the guy gets the message without feeling demeaned, demoralized, or ostracized.
Yes, there were several jesters on the 93 Phillies. Mitch Williams, of course, was one of them. He was, he pitched, as he once said, like his hair was on fire. I went in the clubhouse one time that year in Chicago, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning. Clubhouse is just open for a day game, and he's walking around basically with no clothes on, and he is carrying a burrito at 8 o'clock in the morning. Not a breakfast burrito, Joan. They didn't exist back in 93. It was a real burrito, the size and consistency of a brick, and he's walking around with no clothes on and a gigantic burrito in his hand. And also on that team was maybe the funniest guy I've ever met in Major League uniform, Larry Anderson, who also was walking around at 8 o'clock in the morning. And I will not, so don't push me on this, tell you what he was wearing at the time. It was so bad. It's too graphic to even talk about. But everyone on the team laughs when Larry Anderson walks through the clubhouse because he is the team jester in every way. He makes everyone howl, sometimes with visual props. But so those were the jesters on that team, Larry Anderson and Mitch Williams. And
they play such a key role. And then the last one is the energizer or the spark plug. You think of 100 Pence. Or even Big Papi, in the dugout. It's like, guys, we're gonna do that. And I don't know that they can last over time because it sort of gets a little bit old. You can only hear so many, preacher, reverend preacher stuff before you start getting a nerd to it. But that spark plug who, has great timing, we need to ratchet this up right now and let's get going and motivate everybody. Right. Well, Lenny Dykstra was that guy, but he did it as opposed to in a vocal way. He was the leadoff guy, and he'd look around and go up and hit a home run to start the game and come back and tell everyone, all right, let's go now. I got us going. He could steal a base with anybody. He could run. And he was a maniac in his own right. He would stay at different team hotels and have gigantic parties at the hotel, separate from the team hotel, invite all the players in. So he was the life of the party. He was the spark plug of that team, but mostly he was a spark plug because of his power and speed. He would get a game going, and they would say, all right, Lenny got us going. Let's keep it up. Let's go. Yeah. And it's at the core of what team chemistry is human beings influencing one another and having that sort of contagion that you get going and you share. So Tim, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for the time today. And, I just love seeing you out at the ballpark. It's always a treat to see you out there working hard and the best storyteller in sports because you remember all these details. I love it. I love it.
Well, thank you, Joan. Good luck with the book. And last thought, team chemistry is real. Don't let anyone tell you differently.
Well, read my book and then you can find out why it's real. All right, Tim. Thanks again. Take care.
Thank you, Joan.